This is the Daily Filibuster for Wednesday, June 9th. I'm Mike Collins. Yesterday in the U.S., there were many primaries that occurred across the country, and many of them had severe implications for this coming November election. But a ballot initiative in California will have severe implications for the 2012 election and on. Proposition 14 got rid of party primaries and created an open primary in which any voter can cast their ballot. They will vote for the candidate of their choice, Democrat, Republican, Independent, or third party, and the top two vote getters in this election will then go head to head in the November general election. This is meant to reduce partisanship and to increase competitiveness in the general election. The measure was supported by Governor Schwarzenegger and by Lieutenant Governor Maldonado.
I hope Proposition 14 is the spark that says, you know what, politicians, wake up. We're watching and we're looking and we want you to govern.
Wanting politicians to govern. Well, many of the people running for the state legislature want to govern, and they opposed Proposition 14.
Prop 14 was placed on the ballot as part of a backroom budget deal by Lieutenant Governor Maldonado. California has enough political dysfunction. We can't afford to further cement incumbency and reduce our options on the ballot.
Theoretically, yes, you are reducing options on the ballot by having only two people running head-to-head in November. But at the same time, what really constitutes an option? Is a third-party candidate truly an option, considering they probably don't have a snowball's chance in winning? I say not. So having two people on the ballot who legitimately can win that race is essential to a two-party democracy, which is what we have in America. The curious part about California's situation is that the partisanship is unlike any other state. California requires a two-thirds vote in order to pass the budget on an annual basis. The state Senate and the state Assembly are controlled by Democrats, and they control roughly 62.5% of the seats. But you need 67% in order to pass the budget, so you pick off Republicans. What you get is a Democratic budget with high spending, possibly new taxes, and far-left ideals, and to get the Republican votes, basically a few bribes take place. This is not a very effective way at governing, so Proposition 14 passed by the people is intended to reduce the gridlock and possibly create a more centrist legislature, something important considering California is by far and away the most polarized legislature. How can it moderate? Well, you have two candidates running in the primary, and you can have an incumbent Democratic legislator who is then primaried by a more centrist Democratic legislator. The two of them get the highest vote total and then run head-to-head in the general election, and theoretically an upset could occur. This would allow the legislature to move toward the center and come to more conclusions and reduce the dysfunction in California. Will it ultimately succeed? I'm not sure whether it will increase the democratic nature and the competitiveness therein. But what I would say is that if California really wants to tackle their problems, they need to increase the power of the executive branch and not have the legislature control all the processes. Every year, propositions dictate what the legislature can and can't do, what the executive can and can't do, and the legislature controls most things with these supermajority votes, and the Constitution has no confidence in the executive. Compare this to New Jersey, a state that has similar problems with the largest budget deficit in the country per capita. In New Jersey, however, Governor Chris Christie has one of the most powerful governorships in the country. He was able to impound state spending when he entered office by declaring a fiscal state of emergency since there was no money there to spend. And he has since reduced the budget drastically and will eventually have a legislature that agrees in principle to his cuts. Governor Schwarzenegger, on the other hand, is handcuffed by propositions and by a legislature that largely opposes him. Electoral reform always helps, and a little might go a long way. But in this case, it seems that further reform in the balance of power between the legislature and the executive will be needed before anything has a true impact. That's your filibuster for today. I'm Mike Collins.